I said we can't start without lunch. Okay, so now this is what I believe this is what we're up to. Yesterday we saw the brief shaila. Um, that a person deliberately abandons an object of value. If a person deliberately abandons an object of value, the Rama says that you're allowed to take it and use it as you wish. Okay, and we talked about leaving things on the sidewalk. Okay, let us go on. Sheila, Mahadin kishehechlitu v'hiskimu hatzibor lahachzir et ha'aveda la'achar yeush kisheyadua mihem haba'olim shel aveda zu. What if the community decides a policy that goes above and beyond the halacha? The halacha is that if you know that a person was miyayish on an object, you're allowed to keep it. But let's say the community decides that as long as we can identify the owner, you still have to return it, even if you know that he gave up hope of retrieving it. Would the finder be obligated to return it? Or could he argue that since the Torah absolves him from returning it, or does he have to abide by the community standards which go above and beyond the letter of the law? Now, I don't know why a community would make such a rule. It seems a little bit foreign to me, this whole question, but let's see. So the tshuva is b'makom sheyesh takanas based in o haskamas hatzibur odina malchus alachzer avedel acher yeyush. And the answer is that whenever there's a social convention that is established by a community, or wherever there's a local ordinance from the Dina de Malchusa, from the government, that says that you have to be a good Samaritan law, right? Which, of course, is a Christian phrase. We shouldn't use it, but it's a formal term. So then chayiv lahachzir kishiyodea mihem haba'alim. So then you would have an obligation to return because you have to abide by community standards, even when the community standards go above and beyond the rule of the halacha. Okay, so that seems fairly obvious. I don't know why this was presented as a she'ela, but I guess it could be that conceivably there would be situations where the government would say that if you can identify who this property belongs to, you have to return it to them, even if the halacha would say, well, the person certainly had yeush at that point. Can you think of a scenario, Marv?
I think unless there's clear abandonment, probably there is no time limit really for a guy to come by and says, you know what, that's my briefcase you got there, you know, you thought the guy that gave it or something like that. I think the secular law would say it's, if he can prove it's his briefcase, that is back.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, next.
It's not like stolen, it's not like stealing. Because you found it.
Yeah, and it's not stealing it, he thought, he didn't intend to take it. Probably have to do that.
Okay. Yeah, it could be like a person finds something in a subway station, and based on the circumstances, the person most likely had yeush. Or well, not really, because in the subway station they have a lost and found. Okay. Anyway, let's go to the next sheila. Mishara ta'aveda v'higbia. There's a famous story about an umbrella that stayed in the lobby of the Mir Yeshiva for 30 years because no one came to claim it, and everyone was very respectful of halacha. So I think that's apocryphal, but nonetheless, that's a story that's told in the yeshiva world about the 30-year-old umbrella in the Mir. Okay, she'ela. Yeah, Mishara is Aveda v'higbia. I'm sure there's people that have been learning there for 30 years and they still say, yeah, right. Okay. Mishara is Aveda v'higbia im rashai lahachzir l'makoma. If a person sees a lost item, lifts it up, and now realizes, you know, I should really put that back, So we had seen this before. As long as you haven't left the area, if it was put down deliberately and then you realize, hey, I should just put it back and let the owner come back and get it, then you're okay. So he's putting this in a formal response. He says, "Tshuva mishara saveda v'higbia, hareze nitchayev bahashavata va'asur lo lahachzir lamakom shayita munachat sham." So if you see it, you pick it up, you immediately become chayv in hashava saveda, and you can't put it back. Now, v'yesh omrim shaf b'safik nefila asur lahachzir lemakoma. He says, but that's only according to some opinions if you're not sure whether it fell or it was deliberately placed. But v'imotze ta'aveda b'derech hinuach b'makam mishtamer im higbia chayv lachzir l'makoma. But if you find a lost item that was deliberately placed there, and it's a place where you could argue that it's something that the owner will come back to retrieve the item because it's a relatively well protected area in the sense that it's not out completely in the public, it's out in the corner, let's say. So then if you lift it up, you have to, not only can you put it back, but you have to put it back. So there's I don't know why he's portraying this as a gray issue. We had seen it before. If it was put down b'derech hinuach, the only time you'd be obligated to return it is if you took it home with you. You you find a coat in the coat room and you say, you know what, after shul, I was the only guy left in the whole building, and I found this coat hanging in the coat room. So I decided to bring it home so I could do the mitzvah of Hashava Saveda. And your wife says, you idiot, why did you bother taking the coat? It was derech hinuach. It was put there deliberately. Maybe the guy just decided he didn't need his raincoat that day because the clouds parted. You should have put it back. But now it's too late because maybe by the time you get to shul, he's going to come back and think that his item is lost. And now you have an obligation of Shavas Aveda. But you shouldn't have taken it. You take the raincoat and your wife catches you before you leave the coat room. So then you put it back. Okay. Im hama'abed tzarich edim. Now, when you're returning a lost item, do you need witnesses? So ha'im kishemachzirin listam b'nei adam es aveda, tzarich lo havi edim michashashu ramai umakir ba'osam simonim shel os aveda. So do I have to worry when I return a lost item to a guy who presents simonim? Do I have to be concerned that maybe he's a liar and he just happens to know what the item looks like? So maybe I should bring witnesses to witness the fact that I've returned it to him. So in the event that there's some kind of fraud, I can bring the witnesses to testify. Oh, kol sheno sein siman ein lachar achar of shemahu ramah. Or do we say no? Once a guy presents simanim, you don't have to be choshesh that he's a ramai, that he's a fraud. So the answer is tshuva. Yesh omrim shelistam b'nei adam ein machzirin aveda ad sheyavi edim she'eno ramai. So some say that for a guy that you don't know him from Adam, you can only return the item to him if he brings witnesses that he's not a fraud, that he's an honest guy. Oh, either that, or he has to be well known to us as being a God-fearing, learned person, and then you can give it back to him with clear simanim, that he really clearly identifies the object. V'zehu das marna shulchan aruch, and that's how the mechaber paskins. However, v'yesh omrim de b'simin mufak machzirin afilu bizman hazeh ve'ein sarach edem she'eno ramai b'zehu das harama b'shulchan aruch, and that's the Rama is much more liberal. He says that as long as a guy gives a very clear ironclad sign that he knows exactly what this item looks like, and he says it's his, he doesn't have to bring witnesses that he's a legitimate person. And it seems like that's the vast majority opinion.
I wouldn't call that liberal. I would just say that's more. Every time you find something that you have to call them,
You have to verify.
You want this, you're making a federal case for a scarf or
right.
to do it.
Yeah.
Well, one in the case before where the fish he picked it up, but they weren't liable to return it until they actually took it home. Whereas in most other cases, if you lift something up, you've now acquired. So why when you take
Well-
it off the hook of the cloakroom, why have
We
you
also
acquired
said that you're not allowed to take it.
Yeah, well, the answer is that it isn't yours. In other words, when you pick something up that's not Hefker, it's not, you can't say that I acquired it. It belongs to someone. If I pick up your coffee mug, does that mean it becomes mine? No, of course not. I'm stealing from you. So if I pick up a lost item that the person has not had Yeush, and it's got simanim, and it's in a coat room or in a well-protected area, what right did I have to pick it up? I shouldn't have picked it up. So the answer is, if you took it home with you, in which case the guy may have missed it, and then you have an obligation of Hashavas Aveda because you were a knucklehead. But, basically, but if you haven't left the area yet, so that he could see if he sees you picking it up, so then just put it back to where it was. Okay. Next Shaila. Mi shematza aveda ve'eni yodea mihu ba'al ha'aveda u'cheshehikriz lobo haba'alim lekabbalah al pi siman. So you find a lost item. You don't know whose it is, but it has simanim. When you make a public announcement for 30 days, you post signs, you put something up in social media, no one comes to claim it. In the past, we had said, Yehemunach ad sheyavo Eliyahu, and you're not allowed to use it unless you mark down its value, and then you can keep it for yourself, and so to speak, you've bought it, right? However, what if you say, you know what? I'm not going to buy it because I have no use for this item, but can you use it in a situation where you feel the owner wouldn't mind if I used it? So, for example, you find a pen. Okay, it's not a particularly expensive pen, but it's not just a throwaway pen either. It's a nice pen. You can assume, presumably no one would mind if you needed to sign a piece of paper that you use the guy's pen. During the 30 days of Hachraza, you can't touch it. But what if it's already past the 30 days and it's in the status of Yehimunach ad sheyavo Eliyahu? You got to keep it in a drawer, don't touch it. But what if you know that the person wouldn't mind? If it was my pen, I wouldn't mind. If other people used it, I'm sure he wouldn't mind either. Can you make that argument? So he says as follows. So obviously, when you find an object, you got to make your due announcement to publicize that you found the object. The guy presents simanim and you return it. But if you announced it for the 30-day period, couldn't find the owner, you have to leave it. You cannot use it. And even if you can assume that the guy wouldn't mind, if anything, he'd be happy that someone got use out of his object, you're still not allowed to use it, even if it's something that is clearly obvious that this person wouldn't mind. So that's pretty clear cut. There's no real notes. He's just supplying the source for this.
Didn't we say prior to studying this, these are actual cases that they had? They should preface.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that these are real cases that he's, but maybe they're not. I don't know. Okay, Siman and Mufhakim. So there's something in the Gemara called a Siman Mufhak. Siman Mufhak means that it's not just a siman, not just like you say, oh well, it's brown and it had a scratch on one of the corners. Those are simanim. What if it's a siman muvak? Like I have the serial number, or I can tell you that there was an engraving inside the box over here, and it says these exact words, right? That's what the Gemara calls a siman muvhak, which means a really ironclad siman that only the owner could be aware of. So mahem hasimanim shetzarach litain hama'ami k'di lahachzelo es ha'aveda. So the question is, how specific must the siman be that the claimant has to provide in order to retrieve his item? So the answer is hasimanim shehama'aved tzarach litain u'machzir lo es ha'aveda hem davka b'simanim muvhakim. They have to be very clear simanim that you know what you're talking about. Kigon midah, mishkal, o minyan. So the three that are mentioned by the Gemara is its weight, its measurements, or its number. So you have to be able to provide some type of dimensional accuracy. Osimin she kayim b'chayfetz, or another sign that you can clearly identify this object. Kigon sha'omar nekev b'makom mesuyam. Like you say, oh, there's a hole at this one place. O ketav sheshmo rashum alav. Or if it's like a document or there's some inscription on it that has your name on it. O keshahachefetz mishuna mishar hachafatzim. If you explain it, if you can describe how this is unique, how it's different from other items. O davar shekashur b'kesher mishuna. Or if it's tied up in a certain unique way. Oh, kisha omer shahayu kama dvarim agudim biyachad va'omer et misparam. Or let's say you can that there were many things that were tied together, and you can say exactly the number of how many were tied together. Oh, madbeika shehidbiku haba'alim b'makom mesuyim v'chol kayos b'zeh. Or it has a certain sticker or inscription, and so forth. That's nechshav kesimin. But if you just give the color, oh, it was a black coat. Yeah, okay. Or it was a black hat. Okay. Okay. Sha'omer shemi roshum al hamatbeya. Oh, or if he says, my name is on the ring, right? Ein ze siman. That's not enough of a siman. Just if the guy just says, well, it has my name on it. Why is that not considered to be a siman? So he says, so first of all, when it comes to color, could you argue that certain colors are a siman muvhak? What if the raincoat is fuchsia, or purple, So it could be in those situations that a siman could be a good siman if it's so unusual. So I guess a lot of it will be subjective. It'll depend on how common of a siman this is.
Well, it will also depend on how the shaping is out. Plus, if someone took a picture of it, we'd have to tell more than just the color. It's on the color picture.
Right. Well, this is the important thing, is that when you post an item that was lost, you have to make sure that you don't provide the siman when you say, don't give it away. Yeah.
So what's the reason for not, like, why isn't the name sufficient? If you put your name in your coat, you have a black coat or a black hat, and you put your name in it, that should be sufficient.
It should be, but I guess maybe the argument is that it could be that you sold it. You sold it to someone. I think that's the argument, that just because it has your name in it doesn't mean that necessarily that it's yours. But
No, it's the person that bought it took the name out there.
yeah.
We would have thought so, but I mean.
O keshaomer shemi rashum al hamatbeya. I'm not sure why a name wouldn't be sufficient. It's a good
You
question.
would think it'd be absolutely.
I mean, put it this way, at the intermediate school I went to, we were given a number to put in our clothing, so that if anybody had the same name, wouldn't cross things over. But I mean, I would have thought put your name in your clothing.
Mm-hmm. I would think so too. I don't know why. I'm not sure that he's correct in using our conventions.
Sort of sources things.
Yeah. He says, Aruch HaShulchan, Hey and Vav, Siman Reish Samech Zayin. Let's take a quick look at the Aruch HaShulchan.
Now, from a civil point of view, a name in an item would be sufficient.
Well, if it just said Silverman, you got 10 Silverman.
Yeah, if it just had,
That's true.
I mean, it just had the last name of the person. Maybe something new, this, right? Well, I mean, the brand is a different story, because in England, brand, that's what I'm saying. It's a huge jacket. Is it what say? That's the first one. It's the list of jobs.
Because it's in it.
That's soft.
I wouldn't walk around with that when.
The walking patient. It's just if it's just one of them.
Okay, so the language of the Aruch HaShulchan, I'll share the screen. The language of the Aruch HaShulchan is as follows. Shlosha mine simone heim, geruim umimitzuaim umuvhakim. He says there are three different grades of siman that a person can provide. Poor, medium, and superior, okay? Yeah, poor, medium, and superior, okay? Geruim Ketzad, what are the poor types of simonim? Hare Shabava Omar, Beged Ze Lavanhu, O Adam, O Yarok, O Aruch, O Katzar, the Chayotze Ba'elu. He says a poor simon is if you say this garment was white or red or green or long or short. Okay, Sheish Harbe Kazeh. If there are many that are like that, Ein Ze Siman Klal. That's not a simon. Bafilu Harbe Simonim Geruim Eino Klum. And even if you use a bunch of poor quality simonim, that still is not going to help. Umuvhakim Ketzad. What are superior simonim? Hare Shabav ha'omar nekav yesh bebeged zeh b'tzad yamino b'tachtito racho gimel etzbos misafasa. If a person says, oh, there's a hole in this garment on the right side at the bottom, 3 fingers breadths, or 2 inches away from the hem. Okay, that's pretty accurate. Oh, roshem yesh b'makom hazeh, or there's a stain or a mark on this particular part of the garment. V'chol kayotze bazeh shemitzamtzem hamakom mamish. He says when a person can eyeball or identify the exact place where the siman is on the object, the besiman kazeh matirin gam ba'aguna, that in a situation like that, we can even let a woman remarry. If a guy testifies, I saw a corpse, and I think it might have been your husband. And they say, well, can you identify? He says, yeah, he had a mole on his right cheek, and it was multicolored, right? And he describes it to a T. We can even allow a woman to remarry without witnesses based on that kind of accurate identification. Okay. Now, the emtsaim, what's the middle? Mikri kishemechavein midasa o mishkalo o minyano v'chihai gavna, is that when you can get the exact measurements or weight or number correct. V'chihai gavna, o siman hamakom, or you're able to identify exactly where it was placed. O seder hanachasa, or the way that it was put down, it was stacked in a certain way. Kamo shekasa b'siman reish samech beis. Ulagabe aveda nikru simanim muvhakim rak ba'aguna mipnei chomer eshes ish. Lo nikru siman muvhakim mishum diistapik lehu lerazal im simanim ke'ilu shemachzirin al veda al yadam havi deoraisa. He says now. He says when Chazal talk about simanim muvhakim, we only require that for an aguna because of the chumrah of eshes ish, of permitting a married woman, someone who was previously married, to remarry. But under normal circumstances with lost objects, the rabbis did not require simanim muvhakim. Umahani gam be'isr eishes ish, ohema midurabanan, uveishes ish ein matirin bazeh. So there's a bit of a suffix that Chazal had. Is it, do we require simanim muvhakim when we return a lost item, or is that only to permit a married woman? The Rambam feels that even an average or middle type siman, like the amount or the measurements and so forth, that's sufficient. That's called a siman muvhak. And that's why there's no contradiction between the laws of Aveda and the laws of Eishes Ish. According to the Rambam, even an average siman for lost items is perfectly fine, and that's called a siman muvhak. Vilachen, based on that, imba bal haveda, v'nasan simanim geruim ein machzirin lo. Right? If you just give a poor siman, if the person that comes before us, you don't give him the item. V'hamuchzak l'ramai ein machzirin lo b'siman imtzai, ad sheyavo edem shehi shalo. And if the person has a bad reputation to begin with, then you can only return the item to him if he brings witnesses, if he's only going to bring a middle of the road siman. Uvesiman muvhak machzirin af l'ramai. But for a spectacular siman, like he's able to identify the object to a T, then you can give it back even with that siman, even to a person who is known to us to be a bit of a swindler. So we'll have to finish this next time. But he's getting into a little bit of the technical aspect of this, who the Rambam holds this, the Ravid holds this. So I don't think that we need to see the rest of it. He doesn't get into the issue of if a person's name is in the item. Okay, so we'll hold it here for today. Mirz Hashem will continue tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.